Are you proud to be American? Let's wake up this question. Let's see.
Yes, sir.
Are you proud to be conservative? Are you ready to take back America? Okay. Because only conservatives and conservative Republicans are going to do that. Nobody else. I can assure you. And America is not well. You remember what Thomas Paine said to the tyrant George III? These are the times that try men's souls. You can repeat that today. The tyrant is no longer King George, it's Washington. We've created a new plantation in Washington. It keeps growing bigger and bigger, and it's obstructing people from free enterprise, personal freedom, from jobs, and this has got to change. Yes, I'm ready to run again, and you'll hear about that in 2 weeks, okay? Conservative Party, I would never have been elected in that district. In fact, there weren't enough Republican votes. I won that race with a plurality. I think 14,000 conservative votes gave me the 2,000 majority I needed to win that district. So I know how important you are. But what I did for you in the last 2 weeks is I prepared an update of this book. I'm going to update the book, but I wanted you to have it now. This is a new forward. This tells you what we did between 17 years ago and today. It not only tells you the bad news, because I'm someone who likes solutions. When you're a CPA, you always look to solve the problem. And I'm giving you my plan to get out of this national debt in here. But also what I included for you is a chronology. 5 pages. How did we get from 17 years ago, the story about the frog that was put in a little tank and they raised the temperature imperceptibly every day, let's say 1/4 of a degree. You know what happened to that frog. It boiled to death because it didn't know enough to jump out. That's what's happening to us. Every year, we just increase the spending, increase the debt, we keep things off the books, we seduce you into thinking it's not that bad when it's terrible, and guess what the end result is? America will not be sustainable in 10 years. The debt is not $12 trillion. By the way, when I wrote the book, the national debt on the books was $3 trillion. 17 years, it's now $12 trillion. And what does Obama say? He thinks we're going to spend another deficit this year. Last year it was $1.4 trillion. This year they're expecting $1.3 trillion. But he has said that in the next 10 years, he expects to add $10 trillion to the national debt on the books. You talk about big government. That's $22 trillion. Now, let's just look at this common sense. You don't have to be a CPA to understand what's happening here. Even if you kept interest rates, Mike, down to 5%. Now, I know they're lower than that now. Why? Because we are cooking the books. Again, we're fully America. We've got the Federal Reserve, which has no audit, just making the money supply as big as possible. We still don't know what the bailouts have cost us between what the Treasury has spent and what the Federal Reserve. If we allow this to happen, you know what happened in 1979. What enabled Ronald Reagan to win? And I'm going to give you a bit of his speech in 1980 before he became president. Interest, the prime rate was 21%. Inflation was in the high teens. That's going to happen again. If not 21, you can be sure it's going to go back to 5, 6, 7, or 8, the prime rate. Multiply the lower number I just gave you, 5%, by 20 trillion. That's $1 trillion interest. The worst tax in the world is interest. And a lot of it's going to go to countries we don't trust, like China. Because we're borrowing from China right now. On the books with China now, $1 trillion in treasury bills we have. Plus, we don't even know how much they've lent Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac because there are other things that are off the books. Remember Enron? Special purpose entities? We got them. They're called government-sponsored enterprises, GSEs. There's 28 of them. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, the Post Office. I can give you the whole list. Read my book, you'll get them. That's not on the budget. When they talk about the deficit, they're not counting that. And by the way, do you remember what Lyndon Baines Johnson did, which is what got me to run for Congress in '84? The biggest shell game in the world with the books. To disguise the cost of the war on Vietnam, he came up with this thing called the unified budget. Why? He saw the surpluses in the Social Security trust account We didn't have Medicare back then, it was just starting. Now we have 2 trust accounts that are big. And he said, why should I report these big deficits when I could meld those surpluses in the budget process and just offset the deficit and make it look lower? We have never changed that. So when you get the deficit, what you're getting is a deficit that has been reduced artificially because the surpluses in the Social Security account are offset against it. Now we have Medicare as well. This is not telling the truth. That's why I started a foundation 20 years ago after I left Congress and wrote this book. The name of my foundation is Truth in What's Really Going On in America. We must stop this. And the reason we must stop it is not because it's philosophical, because we will not be sustainable. This country will never be able to create jobs, compete globally, and even defend ourselves if we're going to spend $1 trillion and more in interest.